The markets could be undergoing a major shift soon. While Bitcoin and the NASDAQ are coming very close to the end of major rallies, another index, the Hang Seng Index, China's Hang Seng, could be close to a turnaround to the upside. So could this be a major shift in the markets that's just around the corner? And could there be opportunities in Chinese stocks or even in the Chinese stock index? So we want to take a look at that in this video. Hello, my name is Ben. I'm the founder of MCO Global. Welcome to this new channel. It's our main channel now. The other channels will continue to operate as usual. On this channel, you will find a lot of information about different asset classes. We want to take a macro view. There will be discussions with other analysts maybe. There will be podcast episodes. There will be a lot of stuff that just interests me personally. So it's a bit of an experimental space, but the videos will be different to what you are used to on the, let's say, in the MCO ecosystem. And yeah, today we want to take a look at the NASDAQ, the Hang Seng Index, and Bitcoin. They are three major markets that are highly interesting, and these markets reflect very well the sentiment that we see currently in the economy. So what I want to do today, I want to take a look at the key levels and the Elliott wave counts of the Hang Seng Index, the NASDAQ and Bitcoin on a long-term perspective. I want to compare them. It is important to be, I think, up to date about like the macro perspective, what's going on in the world and where could be major shifts. You know, that's just sort of one of the aspects I want to talk about on this channel. It's important to be up to date. The world is getting more and more uncertain. It's very dynamic. There is a lot of talk about tariffs, possible trade wars. AI is currently disrupting the world. Blockchain is, a lot of people don't even notice. So we want to talk about that today. So talking about China, there are some interesting things to talk about. I don't want to make this an in-depth fundamental analysis video of the Chinese market. I just want to talk about a few things that are interesting, I think. So first of all, some of you might not even know that China has been, I think for 14 or 15 years, has been running a very tight monetary policy. And I think it was from end of last year, China has started to loosen gradually its monetary policy. And this is something that, is kind of new in China, whereas obviously the European economies and the US market, central banks have been running a very, very loose monetary policy for many, many years. But then a few years back, obviously they started to tighten. Now they are loosening again together with China, which is very interesting. So the floodgates of money, they are opening again, right? So overall liquidity is going up across the world. If that is something that interests you, please let me know in the comments if we should do a deep dive into these kind of things in these videos as well. I just need to make sure that the videos don't get too long, but please let me know in the comments what interests you, because as I said, this is a new channel, new content. I need to get feedback of what kind of content you are really interested in. So please let me know in the comments. But yeah, this is just something important that China, that's something new in Chinese politics, and not entirely new, but it hasn't really been like that in the last 14 to 15 years. Also affecting the Chinese market, obviously the talks about DeepSeek. That's already 8 days ago. I mean, it's already gone. The people don't even talk about that anymore. But when that came out about DeepSeek and that the DeepSeek AI model is kind of disrupting the AI industry, the market dipped, obviously. There was a crash, kind of a small crash, but it was not normal for Nvidia to come down that much in one trading day if you watch the market on that particular day. So there is something there that can be very disruptive. There are shifts happening. As I said, this is sort of the overall theme here. There are shifts happening. We see a shift in monetary policy in China. We see a shift in the AI industry. And there are some Chinese stocks that I'm looking at from time to time, like Alibaba, for example, that are actually invested in AI, heavily invested. Also, let me know if you are interested more in kind of AI topics. Everything, all kind of feedback really helps. So let us make this channel really big, and let us make this channel really helpful and interesting for you as well. So that is something that's happening in China. AI. Could AI really support the Chinese economy in the future? That's something I can't answer that at the moment. That's a complete topic for itself, but that is also why I think the Chinese stock index is very, very interesting. I mean, I'm not generally too interested in the fundamental side and why movements are happening, but there is obviously an underlying market mood that creates these patterns on the charts that we take a look at when we look at the charts. So I will do that in a few minutes. And also what is important is the tariff situation. So just recently, Trump announced a 10% tariff on Chinese, what was it here? China said it would implement a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas products, as well as a 10% tariff on crude oil, obviously as a reaction to what Trump did. Here you can see it here. Firstly, China's countermeasures are limited in scope compared to Donald Trump's levy of 10% on all Chinese goods heading to the US. Now, that situation is also very dynamic. Obviously, Trump imposing tariffs on Canada, that kind of sort of not backfired, but they kind of made an agreement and now they're on hold for a month. You know, there's a lot happening there, but I just want to say there are shifts happening in the world with Trump being president. A lot is happening over there. I don't want to say if it's good or bad. That might be a topic for itself. So let me know if you want me to dive into these kinds of topics as well. I don't want to get too much into politics on this channel. I hope you understand. But politics do affect markets and market mood for sure as well. So they can be catalysts. So I just want to make sure before we dive into the charts that people understand there is something there that could create a shift in the economies worldwide. And obviously China being a major one, the US market being a major one, and then crypto sort of in between and kind of, or outside of it, you could even say. But that's very important because at the moment, the crypto sector is moving together, you could say, with the US market. Again, I'm not talking too much about correlations here now. I don't want to get too much into that. A lot of you guys know what my view is about correlations. I'm not saying they don't exist, but I'm saying if you can analyze one price chart, you don't need a second one to verify it. So a lot of people are very much focusing on correlations, you know, oh, how could Bitcoin go up if the NASDAQ is going down and things like that. These are always the things I hear. For example, just to give you one example before we really dive into the price charts, between March 24 and August 24, the NASDAQ and Bitcoin didn't really correlate. They started to correlate again in August. So if you're trading with correlations, that's of course possible, but you need to have a way to measure that correlation as well. And then it's much simpler to just focus on the let's say on the chart you're actually trading. But it still is good from a long-term macro point of view to understand where are we actually and do these correlations actually exist? Are the markets currently correlating or not? Because sometimes they do correlate, sometimes not, and they correlate for a few months, they sometimes don't correlate. At the moment, interestingly, the Bitcoin chart, not the overall crypto market, but the Bitcoin chart and the NASDAQ, they do correlate. So we want to take a quick look at Bitcoin, because before we dive into the Hang Seng Index, I want to just build a case that the NASDAQ as well as the Bitcoin chart, they are really running on their last legs. They are starting to run out of steam. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't think that or think about that. And if you followed our other channel, More Crypto Online, for many, many years, then you know that my view is that probably in Q1, okay, maybe Q2, timing is nothing you can really predict. But my view is that very, very shortly we should see a major top in the crypto sector. Now, this is the long-term chart. I'm not going to take a look at the detailed wave counts here, but this is for a macro overview. And you can see that the Bitcoin chart formed from an Elliott wave point of view, pretty much a 5-wave move up. Why is that important? Because from an Elliott wave perspective, after 5 waves, we typically expect a correction. It is not as easy as that, because this is what we call the Bitcoin bull market, right? 2022, 2023, 2024. And 5. Now, this pretty much was in line with what the NASDAQ did, but it's not as easy as that, because there are larger patterns, bigger patterns, within patterns. And what completes here, up here, where we are in the current price region, and it could go a little bit higher. I talk about that on our separate channel, More Crypto Online, a lot. But what is completing is a 5-wave pattern that actually started in 2019. So from an Elliott 2018. So from an Elliott wave point of view, I believe a good Elliottian would see that as a 5-wave move. Now, there is a lot of talk about, what could cause the crash or the drop, but the main takeaway is, my thesis is that this entire move will be corrected. There are alternative scenarios that we take a look at on the second channel often, yeah. But I just want to make a case that this rally is soon coming to an end here. And okay, whether this is going to turn into a major bear market or whether this is only going to form a correction like this and then recover, we will have to see. Either way, this will be a buyable dip. It will be a buyable dip in my opinion. So that's all about strategy and how you follow the market. But I believe the risk is here very, very high. Now again, what could cause that shift? What could cause that crash? From an Elliott wave point of view, I'm not too interested in that because it's just market sentiment that will change at some point. When everybody who wants to have a position has a position, markets can drop without any catalyst. Oftentimes there is a catalyst, and the Fed is obviously starting to decrease interest rates. When that happened in the past, very often the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 actually crashed because this is usually not necessarily a positive signal for the market. People might think so, a lot of retail traders might think so, but there are usually underlying problems in the economy that then suddenly have an effect, okay? And the economy in the US isn't healthy. There are lots of issues with banks, and again, that is another topic I might want to dive into in these videos. Let me know if that interests you as well. We don't want to go that far. Maybe in another video, we'll take a look at that correlation between the Fed reducing interest rates and being a potential cause for a crash. That's something we could do in future videos. It would go too far here. But just please be aware there could again be a major shift. Now, if we say simply that Bitcoin is correlating with the NASDAQ, that means kind of the market sentiment affecting both of these charts is the same. I'm not saying that a NASDAQ crash would cause a Bitcoin crash. You don't know that. But the market sentiment that is affecting both markets, the social mood, investors have a certain social mood, a certain sentiment, fear and greed that's affecting all market decisions. Well, that's going to change at the same time for both markets, potentially because they're correlating at the moment together. And that is reflected by the Elliott wave count. So we assume typically that the markets are simply based or simply moving based on sentiment. But there are certain things that affect sentiment. Things we can't understand. There are countless things that affect sentiment. News is only one thing. Other events and its general price patterns affect also investor decisions, right? Lots of things, really things that just the natural behavior of people, herd mentality, right? So we can't understand all of that, but sometimes the news event is so large that it affects market sentiment to such a degree that a pattern that is meant to end suddenly finishes, right? Maybe it's overstretched a little bit anyway, and it's meant to crash. It just waits for a catalyst. And whatever that is, there could be all sorts of stuff, right? There could be all sorts of stuff. I mean, just an example, you can't predict that because people talked about, tariffs with Canada, negative. People were concerned and all sorts of things. And suddenly, they have a phone call, Trump and Trudeau, and suddenly they agreed, they come to an agreement and they postpone it for 30 days. So this kind of stuff, nobody knows in advance. There could even be a black swan event, hopefully not, but I'm just saying this is overstretched. Now let's take a look at the NASDAQ chart here. Okay, so this was Bitcoin. Now I also want to take a look here at the NASDAQ chart. The NASDAQ being a really good measure for how the tech market in the US is doing is also, I believe, close to completing a major rally. Now, this is supported by various tech stocks as well. This chart, and I'm going to take a look at a couple of tech stocks just briefly, just to support that thesis. So also here, from an Elliott wave point of view, this is way overstretched. We are close to completing a 5-wave pattern that started in 2022, similar to Bitcoin, but more than that. When we talk about the NASDAQ, it's actually, this is the NASDAQ futures chart, so this is not the cash index, but this is the pattern that started in 2002 that completes up here, right? So it is going to be difficult to call the absolute top, but I think it is enough for this video here just to communicate that we're coming close to the end of a rally, close to a point where a major top is going to form. Is this interpretation correct? I think so, but I could be wrong about that. There are for sure alternative scenarios that I'm watching. What is only important for me at the moment is that we come close to the completion of a large 5-wave pattern, which has the potential to turn into a major bear market. I'm watching that on the S&P 500 chart as well. So if the S&P is something, maybe on the monthly view, if that's something that interests you as well, let me know. But as you can see, this is a wave count that is so similar to Bitcoin's chart. It's very interesting. Looks nearly like the Solana chart to a degree, okay? They both started to rally end of 2022 and formed a nice upside impulse. And I believe that we are currently, since August, in an ending diagonal pattern to the upside, where I'm saying, is it possible that the NASDAQ already formed a major top and we just don't know it yet? Here, there is a potential there. I can easily shift this around and say that this was a diagonal, an ending diagonal. So why am I not doing that from a primary point of view? I can count 5 waves up. But just because a 5-wave pattern is complete, that's some Elliott wave wisdom here as a bonus. Just because a 5-wave move is complete, it doesn't mean the market has to turn around, right? We always need to wait for signals. So while this is a possibility, it is currently not the most probable scenario. What we know, and that all comes down to experience, but also knowing about the rules and guidelines of Elliott wave, we know that when a diagonal pattern completes, it would normally lead to a crash or a massive move into the other direction. That hasn't happened yet. Rather, the decline has been corrective and we are still above support. So this is, I mentioned in the beginning, we want to take a look at key levels. So for the NASDAQ, as long as the market holds above this box, especially the 19,786 level, I can't confirm that a major correction has started. Even though I would prefer that the January low is holding, that formed here around 20,700. It can make another low. I would still call it a 4th wave. What wouldn't be great is then that the market will break out of this channel to the downside. That would already be a big warning, yeah? But people might say, that's far away from where we are now. Well, yeah, it is, but you need to wait a little bit to get a signal. Bear in mind, this is going to be like this is going to be a correction that is probably relating to a pattern that developed over 20 years. So it takes a little bit of time to get evidence, to get enough evidence that this is really a substantial correction that's starting. But the first piece of evidence would come with a break below the August low, the January low, and then the orange support area. Bear in mind, we're talking here most likely about the last rally in this cycle. That is an Elliott wave cycle that's similar to Bitcoin, which also is probably currently in the process of starting its 5th wave to the upside. Now that is supported by several tech stocks. I just want to show you 2 very briefly. The Nvidia chart. The Nvidia chart, we zoom out just briefly. Very much overstretched, yeah. I don't want to get into the detail here, but also here, 4th wave finished in October 22 and then rallied in 5 waves. The 5th wave is extended. Not way overextended. It could still move a little bit higher. I think it might maybe also form one more high like the NASDAQ. But again, we would form a major 3rd wave rally top there, which might have topped as well, but I'm rather on both of these charts looking for one more high, similar to Bitcoin as well. On all of these, I'm watching for a little bit more upside. I'm not calling a top yet, right? Don't panic yet, but it's worth to stay up to date. So this is also a long-term rally that completes there. Another chart that I am looking at is the Netflix chart, which has developed a completed 5-wave pattern, a very nice and beautiful impulse from the 2022 low as well. And this is a very full wave count, which has now reached all my targets, but it could still form one more high on the micro level. Now that again comes down to, just because we have a full wave count, it doesn't mean we have to now get a crash. But it's now the case that the risk is very high on a macro level, and it takes certain, a break below certain levels, like in this case, minimally, I would say, below that gap around 875 to indicate a major top is in. Now, that takes us to the Hang Seng Index. Is the situation there different? Could it be a game changer for investors, for example, right? Could we buy a cyclical low there? Are Chinese stocks interesting? Well, I think if you are, my opinion, and again, this might be stuff for a completely individual video just about the Chinese market. If you are interested in investing in Chinese stocks, it is not as easy as just investing in them. You need to consider the kind of policies, what the regulations. Chinese businesses, especially the tech sector, they got regulated a lot in recent years. And that kept a lot of investors away from China. Obviously also the very tight monetary policy did, but that might be changing a bit. So that is something, it's worth, I think it's worth watching that market. I think some exposure to that market doesn't harm, but I also cannot confirm a major trend shift yet. But do you know why this is so interesting? While in the recent years, especially in the stock indexes, S&P, the NASDAQ, it was always like, oh, you can buy every dip, it's going to go up anyway. I think the next crash could be a significant one and might last years. Maybe even the S&P 500, which would affect the NASDAQ to a degree as well, because it's kind of the same sentiment. The S&P 500 crash I'm considering that might happen could take a decade, for example, right? It's just a very full wave count. So again, if you're interested in the S&P, let me know as well. We can take a look at the macro in one of the next videos. But what is so interesting about the Chinese market, and I might even go to the monthly chart, is that it doesn't move, it doesn't correlate with the US market. Yeah, not that much. So this is here the Hang Seng Index futures chart. I can identify 3 waves up into the 2007 high, and since then the market has only been consolidating. I interpret this as a 4th wave with one more high to come. And it could be a long wave 5, obviously after a very long wave 4 correction. And this correction started 2008. My thesis is that this is currently the correction that might happen for the S&P 500 at some point in the near future. And it is a correction that the Hang Seng Index has nearly completed. Not yet. Nothing stopping the Hang Seng to carry on a few months, maybe even a year. Okay, nothing stopping the Hang Seng and the Chinese market to do that. But the main takeaway is I can already nearly call this correction complete. But I'll show you now what's missing and when I would get bullish. There are a couple of different patterns that I want to show you. From an Elliott wave point of view, one of these patterns is a triangle pattern, which is not normally a high probability pattern, but a triangle is a 5-wave move, A, B, C, D, E. It would only take an E wave, which is a higher low, above the 2022 low, and then it could go. And why is a triangle so interesting? Because if the B wave in a triangle overshoots, which this one did, it's a very bullish pattern. So it's something because the market already tried to push higher, failed though, and we're now in this kind of triangle. It's not a high confidence pattern, but it's something to consider once we have a local top here in place from this rally, which I see only as a corrective rally, completely different structurally compared to what the NASDAQ did, right, from the 2022 low. This is a very corrective rally, and it could be just the D wave of a triangle with one more higher low, and then we go. And important as well, when a triangle is complete, the rally could be substantial, very, very fast. I'm not promising that, it's just something to watch for, which means if the market does this, and then ideally in this region, and this is not for this is just a moving target area at this stage, but roughly from the region, maybe around 16,000, if it starts to produce an impulse to the upside, followed by a corrective pullback, that could be an that could be a point to enter the market. Yeah, that's when I would potentially get bullish. At the moment, I'm just observing. Another way how this could play out is that it's forming this, completing this 4th wave. So not a triangle, instead a normal A, B, C structure, and the C wave is unfolding as an ending diagonal. In this case, we completed waves 1 and 2 of that C wave. Okay, a C wave is a 5-wave move. We completed the 3rd wave, that was 2022. We're now working on the 4th wave, which might go a little bit higher, maybe one more high, and then one more final crash. And then from there, we could get a rally. Okay, so these are the 2 patterns I'm watching for. I'm just very much aware that this market is coming close to the end of a correction. I'm not predicting this is going to happen next week. It will probably take a little while. Maybe when the S&P and the NASDAQ start their correction, maybe that is when the Chinese market will start to recover. It is just something to think about, just something I want to make you aware of. And it just shows that these markets, whereas in the US tech stock sector, the risk is very high now. A lot of these stocks are overvalued. A lot of investors and traders are, they just think it can go up forever. There will never be a correction anymore. That's happening in the US, but the risk is very high in your stock portfolios if you hold a lot of these. I'm not saying we're bearish at the moment, we're not. I'm just highlighting the risk is high. Whereas in the Chinese sector, the risk is sort of low or lower, okay? It would be even lower if we have one more low here, right? Another correction and get much better prices. But then we have to pay attention to the rallies from there. And that's certainly something that I will monitor also on this channel over the next few months, because I think the developments in the Chinese market and the US stock market, this will be a turbulent year, I believe, right? So that's something to keep in mind. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Let me know if that kind of content works for you. Let me know what else you want to see. Every comment helps to make this channel big, keep it grow, help me to research better, produce better content. So any comment helps, any like helps, any subscribe helps, or any subscription helps. So please let me know also in the comments which other topics you are interested in. And we are looking for things that could be tied to chart analysis. So something that has a fundamental. And ideally what I like to do on this channel is keep it a little bit varied. So we want to have technical talks about certain topics, fundamental analysis of maybe certain markets, the global economy. We want to take a look at chart analysis, of course, from an Elliott wave point of view, because that's the heart of what we do. But we also want to do interviews. If there's anybody you think we should invite to this channel, maybe for an interview, let me know. This channel is not very large yet, but we have a massive community, and you can all help to make this channel big so we can invite guests and talk about things and the world and the financial markets with them. So thank you very much. Appreciate all your support. Bye-bye.